Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something you end up enjoying, you never know, it could happen. As you may or may not know if you watch the channel at all, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. There are plenty of things that I think audiobooks do better than book reading, and maybe that's its own video in and of itself. But what I've noticed is that there are certain things that drive me nuts that audiobook narrators do, or just from audiobooks in general, that they just don't cut it when it comes to audiobooks versus the physical book. So anyway, here's my list. My top 6, actually, even though it says top 5, it's also top 5. Top 5, including honorable mention. We can go with that. Audiobook dislikes. They drive me nuts. Let's jump into it. All right, and in no particular order, the 6th or honorable mention. This is one that's just, if you've listened to a lot of audiobooks, you might be really good at pronunciation of character names, and it's not always fully accurate every single time, but you're pretty good most of the time about accurately pronouncing names. The problem is you can't spell it at all. There's no way you can spell, especially these made-up fantasy names that I listen to. It's like almost impossible. Even like Googling it, you're like, so when I try to like go research for a review or anything, I'll go, and so then I go to like Goodreads, see if the name's mentioned in like either the synopsis on Goodreads or a review, or just try to find a wiki of the book or something. But it does make it very difficult to spell anything. Number 5, this is just in general, again, audiobook reading compared to book eyeball reading. The biggest thing, honestly, and I know most people complain about this when it comes to audiobooks, and if they're not very familiar, haven't listened to a whole lot of audiobooks, is that they can't focus. It's very hard to focus, and I will say, it's a frustration that I've just gotten used to as just a part of life if you listen to audiobooks, is rewinding or putting the 15 to 30 seconds back into the audiobook narrator, going back 15 to 30 seconds. It's just inevitable. If you have your audiobook in, there's something that'll distract you, or people assume you're just listening to music and will interrupt you like they will a book. And I've done a short on that where people just assume you're doing nothing if you are reading anyway. So, which is a pet peeve in and of itself, because you're doing something, and it's the thing you wanted to do most of all, and least want to get interrupted doing. It can be hard to focus. I do find the best is when you're doing something like, if I'm just driving to work, something I do every single day. I can do the driving and I can listen to an audiobook. That works very well. I can mow the lawn and listen to an audiobook. I can shovel snow from my driveway and listen to an audiobook. Lots of mundane tasks. And one of my favorite, honestly, is just play mindless games on my phone while I just listen to an audiobook. And too much lately before bed. It's kind of almost replaced physical book reading, which is a frustration, but also I'm trying to keep up on so many books at the moment. So anyway, here we are. Number 4, this one kind of drives me nuts, but you'll see this from time to time, an audiobook narrator, and I hate to say this, but Roy Dotrice, if I'm even pronouncing the name right, the Game of Thrones audiobook narrator, a lot of the older characters will kind of have the same voice, especially the old crone. This is they don't talk like everybody talks like this, and we can't speak the same just because we're old. Everyone speaks the same just because they're old, and it's like, okay, well then who the heck is that? Because you get used to and you get a little spoiled, with your audiobook narrators giving different voices to different characters. And so when it is just kind of like a couple different background older people, then it's kind of just the same voice. It happens from time to time, and it's like it's hard to tell the difference. It's like they don't all sound the same. Come on. When I do an older sounding voice, I sound the same. Number 3, this is actually a recent phenomenon. I hadn't really run into this until recently, and I just think it has to do with more narrators being involved in the process, and there's just so many different audiobook narrators, I mean, you can just kind of do it as a part-time job, as a side job, all kinds of things. But a couple recently, I've been given advanced review copies, and they have this tendency, and I'm just going, I've just never seen this, and like I said, until recently, where they do these awkward random pauses in the middle of a sentence, and it's like clearly they're reading the thing, right? Reading the whatever is in front of them, because I'm sure it's just in, you know, pages they can flip through instead of the actual book itself. I should clearly know more about this probably. So they're reading the thing in front of them, and you could see they either like got to the end of the sentence and moved on to the next, and there's just this odd, and they walked to the forest. And you're going, they walked to the forest. Like, how do you not know how to read this? What is going on? And it's happened multiple times recently. You'll have this just odd space, odd pauses over and over and over again until it starts to make me insane a little bit. And so it drives me nuts. I can let you know who it is. I'm not trying to, they're kind of more independently published, and so I don't want to throw shade, but it's very frustrating to listen to that over and over and over again, where you're like, you got to get that right. Come on. All right, number 2, this is more of just a funny one, and it's pretty much males doing female voices or females doing male voices. I haven't decided who's more awkward, and it kind of just depends on it, I'll be honest. Like Kate Redding, for instance, I think does great male voices. You can't even tell after a while. But I think men doing female voices is kind of funny, because all females just kind of become young boys to a degree, not always. And so it's just kind of funny to hear that. It's inevitable. It's not, I mean, it's like, how else are you going to do it unless you have a big whole cast, which is just, it's already expensive enough to produce an audiobook with one narrator. I can only imagine getting a cast for it. So nothing I'm like forcing on anyone. It's just, it's definitely, it's a funny thing that inevitably happens, you know, unless there's some other issues with the book. But it can be a little awkward. And again, it kind of jars you a little bit and takes you out of the book for a second. Until you just get used to it, which you end up doing after a while. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the channel, but this is my ultimate. I didn't really have a ranking for the rest of these, but this is my number one thing that drives me nuts. So this does have, like, it's the One Ring. Like, they were all deceived. They were all equally annoying to me, but they were all deceived. And the one that's above them all is whispering. When an audiobook narrator whispers, and legitimately actually whispers, and I can't hear it, and then I've got to turn up the volume and go find that spot again, and it just drives me nuts because I missed the whole freaking thing. So whispering is my biggest pet peeve by far. It's one where I feel like you can sound like you're whispering, but just kind of make it sound like you're whispering, but still yell it or speak it loud, like I did there, kind of. But you know, it wasn't my normal voice. It was a little bit changed, but the whispering, because I get it, these are actors, they're acting out this thing, but you're like, but when I'm listening to my audiobooks, I'm like in places where I just can't always fumble out my phone. I wanted, like, I did it to go clean the house or something, or drive or whatever. I don't want to have to access my phone in that given instant to be able to turn it up or rewind or whatever. Now, I know I said you always have to rewind anyway, inevitably, because you're going to space it. I can understand. I give myself all the leeway in the world when it's my fault. That's clearly my fault. I didn't focus, whatever. But when the narrator whispers, it drives me nuts. And it's like, I'm just like, you gotta just regular voice, but like make it kind of sound like you whispered, but not really. You can do it. I can do it even. And I'm not a voice actor. Anyway, that's my biggest one. And that's my whole list. Any more that I'm missing? I'm sure there's more. I thought I'd put together this list. It was kind of fun to me to think about it. I've kind of been developing it for years, really, if I think about it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.